Hi, I want to make a video about generalized experiences, and I might mention something about pride. We'll see how long this goes on. So generalized experiences and how we contrive different barriers around things in describing certain situations and trying to describe things as accurately as we can, the disconnection between thought processes and seeing things and looking past certain barriers and describing things um, beyond a certain extent, and say understanding death and creating different circumstances in comparison and describing situations as best as we can, and describing and trying to contrive generalized experiences as best we can, such as contriving a cause and effect within a closed environment. Even though we know everything has an effect outside the enclosed environment, we just say, okay, this is the initial cause, my finger, even though there's a brain process that caused the initial cause, we're going to contrive my finger being the initial cause instead of the process of the world around me, the chaotic mechanism based on all these different small moving pieces interacting, causing an interaction that we see on my level. We're contriving a closed environment where I say my finger's the initial cause, and then the Rube Goldberg machine is the rest of the interaction. The end is the end of the universe, and my finger's the beginning and the end of the touch, and then I have my magical touch, my green thumb, and then the end is the interaction, the ball going into the hoop or whatever it is, going into the goal, whatever end reaction that happens is the interaction that happens, and that's the contrivance that we have in the end, or the interaction that we have in the end, contriving some kind of enclosed interaction that we experience. And that's exactly what we're doing, is contriving interactions and experiences based on the description of reality that we have. And there's nothing we can do more than that. We can't describe every single circumstance and variable beyond a certain extent. And we can describe it and understand that there's more variables than we can describe it. We can't describe every single variable, and using words and going through the process of language and describing things, even if they're just coming from our own thought processes. We can describe things on our level. And obviously using technology, the advent of technology, we can describe things to a certain smaller level and understand something to a certain degree. But we can't describe every little movement, every little quanta moving in a certain direction doing this. We can just describe the generalized experience, and the generalized experience is all we need. We don't need to know every detail, how everything's moving, and how every single second, every single millisecond, everything, you can just keep on going and going and going because you're contriving it. You only need to experience it and explaining it enough to get the message across. As long as you're explaining it enough just to get the generalized message across, that's all you need to get the idea across, is get the generalized message across. You don't need to describe it, because describing it to a certain degree leads nowhere. It leads to a dead end, because you're just going to keep contriving some kind of need to describe the experience more thoroughly, even though you don't need to describe the experience more thoroughly. Trying to describe every single second, every single variable, every single X, Y, and Z axis, every single this, every single second, every single that, even though it doesn't matter to the mechanism by which that we're working on. The mechanism that matters, and the thing that matters, is just describing it good enough for a generalized experience and a generalized understanding to reach some kind of end, an end that we're contriving to be perfect, and describing a situation perfectly to make sure we reach the correct end in describing something. But the experience is all we need. Generally knowing how the experience works, and knowing what's not possible, and knowing what's not possible, as opposed to knowing every single circumstance that is possible and describing it in every single way. It's the understanding that matters, and proving what's wrong as opposed to proving everything that's right. And that's what matters, is proving what's wrong and not everything that's right. And we can prove all these theories about God and this and that. We can even use an enclosed example in describing these situations. We can understand that this isn't possible. We can understand that this isn't going to be true. You can think about it, like back in another video I made. You can think about it. You can think about it, but that doesn't mean it's possible. Just because you can think about it doesn't mean it's possible. You can think all you want. It's a contrivance in your brain. It's contrivance in interaction. It's by proxy. It's by an effect. In and of itself, it doesn't exist, but by an interaction in your chemistry, brain chemistry, it exists as a notion in your head. In and of itself, it doesn't exist as a physical being. It exists as a physical being, as a notion in your head. It creates a physical process in your brain that gives you a notion in your head that makes it seem exist, that gives you a little blurry aura in your mind that gives you an idea of something existing. Or when you close your eyes, you can see the outline of the person based on these rainbow colors of oily slicks in the black campus of your eyelids, the inside of your eyelids. And when you think about it, isn't that strange? You're not seeing, when you say, like some animals sleep with their eyes open. When your brain turns off, your eyes turn off too. When you know that in many cases your eyelids are the only thing that's making sure that you are seeing darkness when you close your eyes. That's pretty strange, right? Even though it's obviously understandable, when you really think about it, your eyes don't shut themselves off unless you're sleeping. And if you're awake, the only time you can see darkness is if your eyelids are closed. And your eyelids are just a piece of flap of skin over your eyes. Isn't that really depressing? Knowing that your eyes don't have an innate closing system. They need to be dried, and the drying mechanism contrives the mechanism that needs the superficial flap of skin to go over the eyes. And that's what gives you your eye shape and your beautiful superficial appearance is your eyelids and the shape of your eyelids. They serve a practical function, and that's to wet your eye. But your eye, what does that serve? What does your eyelid serve other than a practical function? Oh, it looks a certain way, but by a byproduct, by an effect that it has to have a practical function. The practical function is to make sure your eye stays wet. And the look of it, other than a byproduct of it having a practical function, has no use. It's just a superficial appearance. And in and of itself, the superficial appearance does nothing but have an interaction with other sentient beings. Sentient beings in and of themselves that don't need that experience, and they don't need to exist themselves to begin with. And without them, it would mean nothing. The eyelid and how you look, or any superficial thing that doesn't have any kind of qualitative or quantitative value in and of itself, would have absolutely no meaning or anything beyond that. It would have no function. Sort of like when you look at someone in the face and you recognize there's nothing there but empty space. Emptiness. There's nothing more than emptiness. But I might go on that in another video. About the emptiness behind eyes and how it's very vague what's going on behind your eyes, and it's just a projection. I think I've gone over that before, but that's a good subject to go on. But yeah, describing these generalized experiences is very generally negatively. It's negatively speaking, and we can understand these circumstances to a certain degree, and describing the certain circumstances reality. And just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. Generalized experiences mean nothing beyond cause and effect leading to another effect, and so on and so forth. And that's exactly what it is. It's just a bunch of things leading to one thing and leading to another thing, and that's just about all that's happening, is a bunch of effects happening, and nothing more, nothing less. So I think that's all I wanted to say. I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. And if I did forget anything, I could just mention it in another video. So thank you, and until next time, bye.